Hey guys, today we're gonna read Noodle, the Puppy Place, Chapter 7. And so guys, for this the last part, sadly, of my channel. I'm just kidding guys, JK. And we are not gonna end my channel. This is my first videos. How to get kills and wins on Roblox. They teamed and then betrayed me on Roblox. 8 views, 19 views. 13 views, easy wins, and victory royales. September. Okay, I didn't know how to do that yet. So my cousins helped me on this. September 13, 12 views, 8 views, 20 views, the Puppy Place Flash. I hope you enjoyed that video. Part 2, Puppy Place Flash. Part 3, Puppy Place Flash. The finale part of the Puppy Place Flash. He is so cute. 3 chapters in a row. Mocha. Part 2. 3 chapters in a row again. Mocha. The finale. Mocha. Cute puppy. The one and only Noodle. The Puppy Place. And guys, I don't know what happened. Part 2. Noodle in the Puppy Place. It won't let me upload it. Upsetting. So guys, let's get started. Lizzie did not like being stuck out there, hanging over the ice on that tree trunk. She took a deep breath and inched backward until she felt safe again. Phew, that was better, but her job was not done. She looked out at the collar, even if it was stretched. She would not be able to reach out and touch it. Lizzie glanced back across the lake to where her dad and the boys were waiting. Should she go get help? No, she could do it herself. Lizzie thought for a second. Then, holding on to the tree with one hand, she reached out and broke off one of its long dead branches. Perfect. She stretched out again along the tree trunk and pointed the stick at the collar. The tip of the branch just barely pushed the tags hanging from the collar, and they jingled, but the collar stayed put. Back on the shore, Noodle would not stop barking and dancing around. He really wanted to get that collar. Lizzie tried again, poking the stick carefully beneath the collar and jiggling it free. The tangled of the branches on her third try, she hooked the collar. Now all she had to do was pull it back toward her without dropping it down into the ice. Lizzie concentrated carefully. She guided the collar closer until she could grab it. Then she dropped the stick and inched back, clutching her prize. Finally, Lizzie was back on solid ground, next to Noodle. She had tree bark in her hair. Her hands were scratched, and there was a new tear on the front of her jacket that Mom would not be happy about. But she had the collar. Noodle came sniffling over. Mine! I knew it! Oh, it smells like my people. Maybe we're getting closer to them. The puppy's tail wagged double times as he nuzzled the collar. Well, I guess it must be yours, Lizzie said. Why else would you act like this? She turned the collar over her hands. There were blonde curly hairs stuck in the nylon material. Noodle's hairs. They matched his coat exactly. The collar was definitely his. So in 1 second, when she read the tags, Lizzie would know who Noodle's owners were. That was good, right? Then they did. Lizzie felt like there was a rock in her stomach. She reached out to scratch Noodle's head. She kissed the soft fur just behind his ear. Maybe I'm just not quite ready to give you up, she whispered. Not just not quite ready to give you up, she whispered. Noodle licked Lizzie's cheek, and when she smelled his sweet puppy breath, she felt as if her heart might burst. Lizzie had never thought she could love any puppy as much as she loved Buddy, but Noodle was a very special dog. She didn't love Buddy any less, but there was definitely room in her heart for this puppy she had helped to rescue. Noodle nudged Lizzie's hand, and the tags on the collar jingled. Lizzie took a deep breath. Yes, his owners loved him very much too, and it would be wrong to wait any longer to let them know he was safe. Lizzie turned over one of the tags. It was shots and needs. Rabies vaccination, she read. Expires. Hey, she looked closely at the date. That's like 2 years ago. She looked at Noodle. She wasn't sure of his exact age, but he definitely not 2 years old. Quickly, he turned over the other tag. The writing on it was almost worn off, but she could just make out some letters. Blackie, she read. Blackie. And there was a phone number, at least part of one. Blackie, Lizzie said. But why would anyone call you Blackie? In her hand, the gold hairs trapped in the cloth glinted in the sun. Oh, no. Oh, Lizzie said. I get it. Suddenly, figured it out. This was the collar Noodle had been wearing, but it had once been belonged to some other dog, obviously. Noodle's people didn't love him. They didn't even care enough about him to get him his own collar with his own tags. They must have thought that a faded old hand me down was good enough. Lizzie was disgusted. She gathered Noodle into her lap and gave him a big hug. You deserve better than that, she whispered into his ear. You deserve the best collar in the world, with shiny new tags that say your name. Noodle licked Lizzie's cheek and nibbled on her chin. Lizzie laughed. Okay, I get it. You don't really care, do you? But I do. I care a lot. She got to her feet, and Noodle jumped up, eager to go wherever Lizzie was going. Together, they walked all the way back around the shore of Loon Lake, back to where the others were waiting. Look at Noodle found. What Noodle found? Lizzie said. Dad and Charles and Sammy were perched on a picnic table, throwing sticks for Buddy. Lizzie climbed onto the table. She handed the collar to Dad, telling him all about where she found it. I'm not sure your mom would be thrilled to hear about you climbing sideways tree over the ice, he said, but Lizzie could tell he was kind of proud of her. Charles and Sammy leaning over his shoulder. Interesting, he said. It sure looks like Noodle was wearing this, even though I can't imagine anyone calling him Blackie. Plus, it looks way too big for Noodle. Exactly, Lizzie said. That's probably why it slipped off in a hand-me-down collar. So now we can call the number on the tag and find Noodle's owners. Charles ruffled Noodle's ear. That's good news. Lizzie did not exactly agree, but she kept that to herself. How many times had she told Charles that he just had to understand what they weren't going to be allowed to keep the foster puppies more than anything, that she could keep Noodle forever. That may be easier said than done, Dad said, peering at the tag with the phone number on it. This number is kind of worn off. When you get home, Dad took the name tag off the collar. Mom joined them at the kitchen table. Oh, they passed it around, looking at it under magnifying glass. The bean squirmed his way onto Lizzie's lap so he could see. Ugh, Mom, the bean is really starting to stink, Lizzie said. Can't we please wash his fur? She didn't even want to touch it. It was that toothpaste all down the front and a piece of gum stuck to one sleeve. Gross. No, the bean said firmly. Mom shrugged. I did tell him it was his choice, she reminded Lizzie. I have to stick to that. It's only fair. May I remind you that you ran around in pink cowboy boots, a tutu for pretty much the whole time you were 3. Why? Because I agreed that you could. A deal's a deal. In my book, deal, Bean agreed, nodding hard. His lower lip was stuck out far enough to the trip. Any minute now he might start wailing, Lizzie sighed. All right, sorry, forget I said anything. It's okay, sweetie, don't worry. She patted the bean's back, trying to avoid the crusty spots on his fur. Dad was still looking at the dog tag, so I can read the last part of this phone number. All right, he reported. I think it's 555-7227. But the area code is just about totally gone. I think it starts with 8, though. So, how many area codes can there be starting with 8? Charles said. No big deal. We'll try them all. Charles' plan made sense to Lizzie, and she knew that trying to find Noodle's owners was sat down at starting dialing. She was using the kitchen phone because Dad's cell phone, which the whole family usually used for long-distance calls, had completely run out of power, and Dad still couldn't find his charger. Hello? Lizzie swallowed hard, suddenly realizing that she should have thought about what she was going to say before. She dialed the first number on her list. She had started with the area code 802. Vermont. She could have tried 801. That was Utah, and the second way too far away from Noodle's owners to live. Hello, she said. I was wondering, do you have a dog named Blackie? Or did you used to have a dog named Blackie? And now you have a puppy, like maybe a golden doodle, but he's missing. Excuse me? Is this some kind of prank call? The woman of the other end of the line sounded completely confused, and Lizzie couldn't blame her. But obviously, this was not Noodle's owner. Otherwise, the name Blackie would the mention of a missing puppy. Would you have you meant something to her? Never mind, Lizzie said quickly. Wrong number, I guess. She hung up and looked at the list of numbers on the pad by the phone. Then she crossed off the first area code, 802. There were at least 15 more to try. Lizzie sighed. To be honest, she didn't really even want to find Noodle's real owners. She glanced over at the dog bed in the corner of the kitchen where Noodle was snoozing after his own lunch. His puppy belly was full and round, and his big soft paws were twitching. Lizzie knew that meant he was probably dreaming about running, chasing squirrels. Noodle, she said softly, she could have watched him all day, even when he was just lying there sleeping. He was such a sweet puppy. Noodle's nose twitched, and he opened one eye to look back at Lizzie, laugh. That made Noodle jump right up and gallop over to say hello. Hi, hi, hi! How about some pats? I love the way you pat me. It reminds me of the way my people pat me. Think I'll see them again soon? I sure hope so. I mean, I like you a lot, but as nice as you are, you're not my people. Lizzie reached down and pulled the little pup onto her lap. You are the cutest, she said. I mean, next to Buddy, that is. She kissed the top of his head. And you smell so good, especially compared to the bean. Especially compared to the bean. They really had to do something about that fur. It was time to try another phone call. This time, Lizzie tried to figure out what she would say before she dialed but the second call. Did you go much better than the first? Did you go much better than the first? Hello. The man who answered spoke loudly, and sounded annoying. Hello, my name is Lizzie Peterson, and I found a puppy of rather a purple collar. Well, both really, and click, the man hung up before Lizzie could even finish. How's it going, Miss Lizzie? Dad came into the kitchen, wiping his hands on a rag. He had been working on his pickup truck out in the driveway. Lizzie sighed. Not very well, I guess. Tell you what, Dad said. Why don't I try for a bit? Maybe folks would listen a little better to a grown-up. Anyway, we need some of your famous signs. How about if you head upstairs and get to work on the computer? And I'll take over on the phone. Lizzie was happy to hand over her list of area codes. Come on, Noodle, she said. Let's go upstairs. Noodle scrambled to his feet and followed Lizzie out of the kitchen. Sure, I'll go anyway with you. What are we doing next? Maybe we're going to see my people. Upstairs, Lizzie got out of the camera and posed Noodle on the blue rag rug next to her bed. First, we need a great picture, she said. Look at me, Noodle. Noodle jumped up and ran over to Lizzie, sticking his nose right up the camera. Lizzie giggled. No, Noodle. You have to sit anyway. Anne looked through the camera again, focusing on Noodle's adorable face. Ready? Ready? She asked. Noodle jumped up again. This time Lizzie just put down the camera and gave him a big hug. You are the silliest, she said. She lay down on the floor and let Noodle dance around her, snuffling at her hair and licking her ears. It was so much more fun to play with Noodle than to make a dumb sign looking for his owners, who probably didn't even care about him anyway. Noodle. Lizzie looked up to see the bean peering around the corner of her door. Come on in, she said. Want to play with Noodle? Yeah, the bean ran into the room. Noodle, he threw his arms around the puppy. Noodle squirmed away. P.U. Sometimes I like yucky smells, but a delicious pile of garbage is one thing and a stinky human is another. This little boy does not smell very good, and not like my people, Uppy? The bean asked. He tried again to reaching forward to give Noodle a big hug, but Noodle stepped away, and the bean plopped down on his behind, looking sad and bewildered. Uppy, no play. Lizzie had a feeling she knew exactly why the Uppy didn't want to be near the bean. I think it's your fur, she told her little brother gently. I think Noodle doesn't like the way it smells. But the bean looked as if he might start screaming any minute. I'm not telling you to wash it, Lizzie held up her hands. That's your choice, but you know every puppy needs a bath once in a while. The next day was Monday, and Lizzie and Charles had to go to school. Lizzie could hardly stand to miss 1 minute with Noodle before she left and kissed and hugged him so much that Buddy was jealous and came over to put his paws up on her knee. He wanted attention too. Of course I'll kiss you, Buddy, Lizzie said, kneeling down. I always love you the best of all, but she bent down to whisper into his soft brown ear. Wouldn't you love to have a little brother all day in school? Lizzie daydreamed about what if would be like if Noodle could live with the Petersons forever. When her parents first agreed that Buddy could stay, it had been like a dream come true. Having a dog of their own was the best thing that had ever happened to Charles and Lizzie and the bean. So, what about having 2 dogs? Lizzie could hardly even imagine how much fun that would be. So far, none of the phone calls that had made the Petersons would never find out who they were, or better yet, Lizzie pictured this. They would find them, but the people would say they just really couldn't take care of a dog. They'd say they just really couldn't take good care of dog. They would ask if the Petersons knew anyone who wanted to adopt Noodle. Well, Mom would say, I never thought we could handle 1 dog, much less 2, but we'd love to have Noodle. By the way, time school ended, Lizzie had practically convinced herself that Noodle was already hers, or at least that he would soon be hers forever, but she had figured out that it would probably be the best if she finds his people, so she would know for sure that he really needed a home. she had a plan too. During math period, when she should have been practicing fractions, she had been thinking dreamily about the day before at the lake when she had found Noodle's collar. Suddenly she remembered that she'd seen Paul's prints in the snow near the tree. There was still enough snow on the ground that maybe, just maybe, she could find more paw prints to come from. On the way home, after school, Lizzie admitted to Charles that she was hoping that they could keep Noodle forever. But even if you find Noodle's owners and they don't want him, do you really think Mom would let us have another dog? Charles asked as he and Lizzie, hi, we're home, she yelled. Buddy, Noodle. The two puppies came galloping into the front door hall, with the bean running after them. Both puppies were barking, and the bean was squealing with laughter. Noodle ran right up to Lizzie and Charles. Yay, yay! You're home. Time to play! If only my people were here to play with us too. Then his place would be perfect. Charles let Noodle lick his cheek. Then he made a funny face. What's that yucky smell? He asked, wrinkling his nose. Lizzie didn't say a word. She just pointed to the bean and his matted fur. Oh, said Charles. Right. He leaned away from his little brother. Buddy and the Noodle were edging away from the bean too. The bean frowned. Lizzie saw him sniff the arm of his fur. Just maybe, he was almost ready to give in and let the stinky sweater be washed. Lizzie, Mom came out of the kitchen. Lizzie, I called the police station again, she said. Lizzie felt her insides go mushy. You did? She asked. Did you hear anything about any missing puppy? Mom shook her head. Sergeant Martin was supposed to be back today, but he called in sick. The officer who answered said he didn't think anyone had called about a missing dog over the weekend. Lizzie let out a breath. What a relief. If the police had gotten a call about Noodle, that would mean his people were looking for him, and that they did care about him, and that they probably letting the Petersons adopt him. Lizzie pulled Noodle onto her lap and gave him a great big hug. I know it's disappointing, said Mom. We all want to find Noodle's people as quickly as possible. Think how much he must miss them. Lizzie tried not to instead. She sent Noodle a thought message. Think about how much I love you. Noodle squirmed deeper into Lizzie's arms. Nice hugs. My people used to hug me like that. Even though this girl is nice, I still miss them. Mom, can you drive me in Charles to Loon Lake Park? There's something I want to check out down there. Lizzie put Noodle down at the walk for a walk too. By yourselves? Mom looked doubtfully. Well, will you promise to be careful around the ice? You think I will fall in? Well, okay, Mom said. I have some grocery shopping to do. I'll drop you off on the way to the lake. Lizzie and Charles rode in the back of Mom's van near the dog crate and held Buddy and Noodle. It was as if they were all trying to stay as far away as possible from the stinky bean in his car seat. See you in half an hour, Mom said as she let them off at the lake. Be careful, she called as he drove away with the bean. That should be just enough time, Lizzie said. She was holding Noodle's leash, and Charles was holding Buddy's leash. Buddy's. Let's go. One again. Noodle pulled on his leash, dragging Lizzie along the shoreline. The edges of the lake. It was hard to believe that in a few short months she would be swimming in the cool, clear water. Most of the snow on the shore had melted away too. Lizzie was disappointed. That meant they probably wouldn't find any tracks. Where are we going? Charles asked, stumbling along behind Lizzie. A few minutes later, they arrived at the fallen tree. See, this is where the collar was. Lizzie pointed to the branches hanging over the ice. All the way down out there? How did you get it? Charles asked. It wasn't easy, Lizzie remembered, inching her way out of that tree trunk. They remembered something else, that the way the tags were jingled her way out of the tree trunk. Then she remembered something else. With a stick, one tag would not make a jingle sound. There had a jingle sound. There had been two. She had forgotten all about the other tag. Charles, the collar. Besides the name tag, there was another tag on it, a rabies vaccination tag. Charles' eyes lit up. Really? Maybe it'll give us another clue about who Noodle belongs to. Where is it? It's back home, Lizzie said. Remember, Dad hung the collar on a nail in the garage since it was too big for Noodle anyway. Suddenly, Lizzie didn't mind any more about not finding any tracks. She couldn't wait to get home to take a look at the other tag on that purple collar. Dad was home by that time. Lizzie and Charles got back from the lake. Lizzie ran straight for the garage and grabbed the collar. See, she said. When she was back in the kitchen, she showed it to her dad. We've forgotten about the other tag. Her words tumbled out as she explained. She picked at the tag. Boston, she said. This says the dog was registered in Boston. Maybe Noodle's owners are summer people who were up at one of the cabins for the weekend. Dad peered at the tag. Huh? You may be right. He grabbed the phone book and flipped some pages. Okay, here's a Boston area code that starts with 8. Let's try that number. He went right to the phone and dialed. Inside her jacket pocket, Lizzie crossed her fingers. Was this it? The moment of truth when they would find Noodle's owners? But Dad shook his head. No answer. He was still holding the phone to his ear. Then he held a finger. Hold on, there's a machine. He waited for a second, then said, hello. My name is Paul Peterson from Littleton, near Loon Lake. Have you lost a puppy? We found him, and he's safe and sound. Call us quickly. He rattled off his phone and hung up. Now what? Lizzie asked. Dad just shrugged. I guess we just have to wait to see if we hear back, he said. Anything. Chapter 10, Anything. Lizzie asked as soon as she got home for school. And the next day, did anybody call? Not yet, said her mother. Lizzie could hardly stand it. She had thought they were so close to finding Noodle's owners, but why hadn't anybody called back? Lizzie sat at the kitchen table, fiddling nervously with the purple collar. Finally, she couldn't stand sitting still for one more minute. She had to do something. Buddy, she called. Noodle! Both puppies came galloping into the kitchen. Look at you two, Lizzie said. Your paws are all muddy from being at the lake yesterday. How about a bath? Now that sounds like a good idea, said her mother. Maybe Charles can help. Just be careful. Keep the doors closed, Lizzie laughed. She knew Mom was remembering the last time Lizzie had given two puppies a bath. They had managed to escape and run through the house, splattering soapy water everywhere. Charles ran the water while Lizzie gathered towels and puppy shampoo. Then she rounded up Buddy and Noodle and brought them into the steamy bathroom. She and Charles had just lifted Noodle into the tub, and then Buddy. When there was a knock at the door, bath time, the bean asked. When Lizzie opened the door, cried, bath time for puppies. Lizzie's eyes widened. Why not? There was more than one way to wash a fur. Yes, she said, that's right, bath time for puppies. And a few minutes later, the bean joined Buddy and Noodle in the tub with his fur on. The two puppies where the little boy wriggled in the suds, while Lizzie rubbed puppy shampoo into the bean's fur and started to scrub. Goodbye, oatmeal. Goodbye, grape juice. Goodbye, milk. Goodbye, toothpaste and dog food. Puppy bath time was noisy and wet and took quite a long time. Finally, while Charles and Lizzie were rubbing the puppies and the bean with the towels, Mom called for downstairs. Lizzie, Charles, can you come right down? We have company. Noodle, still a little damp, led the way downstairs. Lizzie's age with the same dark hair. Wait, there was a girl next to her, about Lizzie's age, with the same dark hair. Mrs. Rispoli, Mom said. She just drove all the way up from Boston, and this is her daughter, Sophia. Lizzie's heart thumped instantly. She knew exactly who those Rispoli people must be. They were Noodle's owners, the people who didn't care about him, the people who had totally abandoned him. But Miss Rispel was rushing toward Noodle. Oh, there he is! She scooped him up before she kissed him all over and over on the top of his head. Sophia squeezed in so she could kiss Noodle too. I don't believe it, cried Miss Rispoli. This is so amazing. I hope it's okay that we drove straight here. I tried to call, but I kept getting voicemail. So we just drove up to Littleton and asked where the Petersons live. And here we are. She kissed Noodle all over and hugged them tight. Lizzie all over and hugged him tight. Lizzie could see tears rolling down Miss Rispely's face. There was no question about it. This woman was glad to see her puppy. Lizzie suddenly realized that Dad must have left his cell phone number when he left that message, and Dad's cell phone was dead, and he still couldn't find his charger, and explained why they hadn't heard from anyone. Noodle was kissing Miss Rispel and Sophia, back covering their faces with huge slurpy licks. His tail was wagging a mile a minute. "Oh joy! Oh joy! My people are here! Oh joy!" "Boy, Noodle sure is happy to see you." Lizzie couldn't help feeling a tiny bit jealous. "Noodle?" Sophia asked confusedly. Lizzie blushed. "That's what we were calling him," she explained. "What a great name!" Miss Rispel held Noodle up in the air and rubbed noses with him. "We called him Bronson, but it never really seemed to fit. Maybe he really is a noodle after all." She hugged him closely again. "No matter what his name is, we are so happy to see him again. I thought he was gone forever." "But if he ran away, why?" Lizzie resiled. It might be rude to ask why the Rispelians had not looked for their puppy. "Why didn't you look for him?" Miss Rispely asked. "I did. I looked and looked." She put Noodle down and watched his tears in her eyes as he ran off to wrestle with Buddy. "I drove up to your house on Loon Lake last Friday morning, and just to pick up some extra chairs we need for a huge surprise party for my mother's birthday," Miss Rispel explained. "We'd been planning the party for months. Noodle came with me. When we left Boston, I couldn't find his collar, so I just put our old dog Blackie's collar on him. Up at the lake house, I was loading chairs into my car when that naughty puppy ran off. I tried to follow his tracks, but he was nowhere to be seen." Lizzie had hands over her mouth. What a story! She would have been heartbroken if she ever lost Buddy like that. "I called and I looked all over, but there's no sign of him. I phoned the police and left a description, but they hadn't heard anything. I even stayed overnight, even though I hadn't planned to, and looked some more on Saturday morning My throat was raw, and some from calling him for me. But by noon I couldn't stay any longer. I couldn't stay any longer. I had to leave things in the hands of the police. And hope for the best so I could get home in time for the party. Even though nobody was going to feel much like celebrating with Miss Risley blew her nose into the wad of tissues she was clutching. Oh, how I hated to tell Sophia and her father. Lizzie finished the story. "I guess your information just got lost at the police station because of the weekend and Sergeant Martin being out and everything, but lucky we found Noodle later on." Saturday afternoon, swimming around in a spot of open water over by the park. He must have spent Friday night outside wandering around and trying to find his way home. Miss Wristband started crying again. I know, your mother just told me us all about the rescue. Isn't it amazing? And it's perfectly fine. She shook her head, smiling through her tears. It's wonderful. So Lizzie almost hated to ask, mainly because she thought she already knew the answer. I guess you wanted to keep him. Miss Roosevelt stared at Lizzie. Keep him? Of course. We'll never let him out of your sight again. Then her eyes softened. Oh, I see, she said. Did you think he had been abandoned? Lizzie nodded, turning her face away to hide the tears that seemed to be leaking out of her eyes. She could talk. She reached out to pick Noodle up one last time. She knew she had been silly to even think about Noodle being hers forever. That was not how his foster puppy thing worked. It was all about finding the best home for each dog, and Noodle had a wonderful home. Lizzie knew that now. She could tell by the way Miss Rispel and Sophia looked at him that Noodle would always be loved and cared for. She couldn't hold on to him, and the way of the bean had held on to his fur. She had to give this puppy up. Lizzie buried her nose in Noodle's soft, sweet-smelling neck, giving him one last kiss. Tears welled up in her eyes. She tried to hold them back, but one of them dropped onto Noodle's nose. Tell you what, Lizzie, Miss Ripples said, kneeling down to sew what she was looking straight at Lizzie. We'll be at our cabin all summer. It's at Lizzie. Straight at Lizzie. We'll be at our cabin all summer. It's the little one with the moose antlers. Do you know the one I mean? Lizzie wiped away another tear and nodded. I love that cabin. Well, I hope you and your brothers and Buddy will be regular visitors. Don't you agree, Sophia? Sophia nodded eagerly. We can teach Buddy and Noodle to jump off our dock the way Blackie used to. She smiled shyly at Lizzie. Miss Rispoli reached over and gave Noodle a pat. And I know for sure that Noodle, will always be happy to see you and his new best puppy friend, Buddy. Wow, Lizzie couldn't believe her luck. Finally, she would find out what it was like to be at one of. She would still be able to watch Noodle grow up. She would still be able to watch Noodle grow up. She started to feel a little bit better. She said, she tried to smile. Thank you. It was time. She gave Noodle one last hug and walked over to put him gently into Sophia's arms. No, said Miss Riswell, leaning down to kiss the top of Noodle's head. Thank you for saving our precious puppy. So guys, that's the end of this book, the end. And so guys, I hope you enjoyed this book, Noodle. And it was a winter story. It was in January, winter story. And guys, I hope you like it. And so, bye guys. And I'm still wondering how to fix my second video. So, please comment down below and help me. Thank you. Bye guys.